Good evening, I'm DK Roster. Welcome back to the TTT News on TTT, where we live for local. The Trinidad and Tobago Film Fest is upon us, and we are happy to be joined by Juliette McCawley and Rhonda Chan-Su behind Don't Call It Ghetto, directed by McCawley and produced and written by Juliette McCawley, and My Watershed, My Home, directed by Rhonda Chan-Su. Good evening, ladies. How are you?
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Doing well, thanks.
Very happy to have you join us. And Rhonda, we'll start with you. Thank you. Tell me about My Watershed, My Home. What is it about?
Yes, so My Watershed, My Home is a short documentary film that features the stories of a few different members of the community of Fondamans and St. Anne's, and really looks at their passion and their drive and their dedication to regenerating the hills. So we really get to spend time with them and to understand their journeys and their work and why they do what they do.
And what is it that made you say, this is a project that I want to take on?
Yeah, so I was actually doing some work, some educational videos for the Foundation for the Bioregional Autonomy of the Orinoco Watershed. And we've been talking about doing a documentary film, and it turned out that there were so many rich stories of all of these different people in the community, and it's sort of stories that might have gone, or they themselves might not have even recognized the importance of telling it. So for me, when I heard, for instance, that one of the people, Johnny Stolmeyer, is a midnight robber and he's been doing this for however many years, and that his performance also incorporates all of these different aspects of his own philosophy that he's developed over the years, I just knew that there were a few unique angles that we could look at, even within this type of environmental film.
And we want to talk about some of those angles in just a bit, but Juliette, also telling stories about individuals and communities. That's what you are doing. So what is Don't Call It Ghetto about?
Don't Call It Ghetto is a documentary about a woman who at the time was a single mom of 3 who grew up in East Dry River, Harlem, East Dry River, and she is a policewoman. And it is her story of what she went through to become the woman she is today. Namely, is very strong, very driven, dedicated policewoman who really is trying to help her community and to build the trust again in the police uniform. She's done a lot of work for years, always wanting to lift the people who from her community, lift the people who work with, and establish that.
And now, this is something that is very timely, and both of your pieces, but I'll continue with you, please, Juliette. Looking at some of the things that we're seeing in Trinidad and Tobago with the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States, did that give you a little more push, a little more energy, or did that say, I wonder if I should wait a little while before I actually have this project see the light of day? How did those factors tie into what it is you're doing?
Well, actually, this documentary predates a lot of that. It was filmed a while ago. I do think it is timely because, I mean, her whole message and the reason why she agreed to be in the film is that, the name of the film is Don't Call It a Ghetto, and it's something that she actually says in the film. Because, growing up at East Dry River, she experienced like a lot of stigma, and she saw that her community experiencing a lot of stigma for that area, for being from that area. And she saw a lot of pain and struggle, and she wanted to do something to make a difference, which is why she wanted to be a policewoman to help her people in her neighborhood, but also in her community as well. But she also especially wanted to sort of like regain trust in the police force, because she knows she tells very often in the story that a lot of people in the police force are there to help, they want to protect, and it is a lot of they have to deal themselves with stigma about, I mean, when people see the uniform, and she's trying to build a bridge of trust in her work and see what she does for them.
Okay, now in terms of Rhonda, going back to you, thank you. Telling stories, and you said you were doing some documentary work, but then you realized that there's so much rich content to be mined. How do you kind of balance that line between saying, okay, well, this is who I am as a director versus this is the story of the individual that I want to take center stage? How do you traverse that?
That's an excellent question. I really like to be able to, for my characters to feel like I've told their story. And I try to, regardless, well, first of all, for me to agree to even do the film, I think that I need to, I'm speaking as of this moment in my filmmaking career. It might change later on, but I tend to need to feel some sense of belief in the work or the mission that my characters are involved in. And then after that, I try not to taint it too much. I mean, I try to tell their story, and that to me is one of the markers of success when somebody says, thank you, you really, really helped to tell my story.
Okay, you feel the same way, Juliette?
Yeah, absolutely. In this case, it was the director, McCawley, who directed and edited it. And he very much, makes the subject very comfortable and safe. And he just captures them as they are and tries to make sure that, it is authentic and real, what we were seeing, what's being shared, and that they really get to feel, comfortable. She got to watch the film. And the first people to get to watch the film and make sure that she was okay with everything, how we depicted her and everything, and she was, and that's all we could hope for.
Now, your film is 42 minutes, Juliette, but in terms of saying, okay, well, there's all this information, and I need to kind of whittle it down. This is what I'm going to write. This is what I'm going to address. How do you focus that lens on this specific individual, or this is how we're going to put those chain of events together?
Yeah, I mean, it was tricky because she gave us access to a lot of aspects of her life. We were just so lucky that she was getting married around the time we were filming it. She said you could come to our wedding, and we got access to her family and her friends and to her neighborhood, and it was a lot. But we always knew going in that this story was about showing the human side of a police officer. And showing a woman, it didn't matter where she came from, but she was just a human trying to do good in the world and had a great sense of pride in her job as a policewoman. So that pretty much dictated how the story unfolded, capturing her life. She's had some really powerfully tragic moments, but she survived it, and she's a strong, wonderful human being.
And we see how next the story unfolds as we continue with this conversation. Juliette McCawley and Rhonda Chan Su speaking about TTFF20. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are speaking with Juliette McCawley and Rhonda Chan Su. Shameless plug festival, the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival, runs from September 9 to 15. Now the screenings are all online this year, and tickets can be bought online at ttfilmfestival.com, and there is more information that is available on their website and various platforms. But ladies, I'll open it up now in terms of asking either, well, both of you, what does it feel, how does it feel to be part of this experience in terms of being part of the festival? So I'll ask you first,
You want to go first, Juliette?
Sure. It takes a lot of hard work and a lot of effort to, bring a film to life. The project had, for my film, it took 6 months of filming and took, a long time edits, and I know a lot of passion was put into it. So having a venue, having a platform in which films can be shown for any filmmaker, it's huge. And unfortunately, we don't see enough of local films in our cinemas. So this is our one chance, and so it means a lot to be able to have our stories told locally, especially when there's stories that are trying to make a difference or start a conversation.
What about you, Rhonda?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Juliette has said, and just to add to that, I think that it's a really great opportunity for us also as filmmakers to experience and to see the fruits of the hard work of our creative community. So I think it's just an honor to be a part of that.
Well, you talk about fruits, and some people liken a production like this to a labor of love, something that you carry around for a while. Some people even call it their child. What are you going into, or what are you hoping that people take away when they look at your fruits, when they look at your children, your respective children, and just this labor of love that you've been putting in hours for? And we continue with you, Rhonda.
Yeah, I think for different projects, there are different objectives. But by and large, the objective, or one of my objectives is to add to our local Trinidadian stories and our Caribbean stories, and giving people a different perspective, immersing them into somebody else's experience, and really for us to understand more about each other and this experience of being human. So yeah, but for this piece in particular, it is also to raise awareness of the environmental issues and to highlight the work of these really incredible environmental activists, and to hopefully inspire people to action, to do something different.
Juliette?
Well, I definitely, I know the goal of this film was to humanize and tell her story honestly about who she was and the life behind the badge, and hopefully, and also in doing that, destigmatize, the police force, destigmatize people from, a place like East Dry River, and just start conversations. This is, she comes from a world and a job that we don't often get to see the behind the scenes, like what really goes on to be a police officer. And yes, it's a chance to sort of like open a window onto a world and allow people to see and have a different perspective, I think is what the goal of most documentaries are as well.
And I appreciate you all both talking about opening that window, giving perspective, humanizing your subjects. Recently, we would have had the Prime Minister talk about the power of a name and refusing to call certain areas hotspots. And you talking, Juliette, about humanizing and giving a different view. And Rhonda, in terms of the individuals dealing with Fonzamans. And we recently spoke with Akila Jaramogi. And sometimes people think you have to be a superhuman individual to take up a superhuman task, as opposed to just saying, I am an individual who wants this to happen and I don't see anybody else doing it, so I'm going to pick up the challenge. But with regard to picking up the challenge, what would you tell somebody if they have a story that they want to tell and they're thinking about writing or they're thinking about producing, but they may think that the challenge is a little too daunting? Rhonda?
I would say, just to start, I mean, before you make a good film, you probably have to make a lot of really, you know, maybe bad films. But, you know, it's all a work in progress, and there's value in each and every one of our stories. And I would just encourage them to, yes, get to work.
Okay, Juliette, if somebody says they have an idea, but I don't see myself as a writer, even though I want to write and I'm practicing, you see, just like how you have bathroom singers sometimes, what would you tell that aspiring writer?
Well, I have to say, in terms of documentaries, I just want to second what Rhonda said, because we have so many fantastic stories in Trinidad that have not been told. So many people I know who have grandparents who've had like crazy stories growing up, and they're dying, and these stories are dying with them. So very often when you've got an interesting story to tell, that story can almost tell itself. You don't need to necessarily have a fancy camera. You can just use your cell phone even and record, even if it's just a voice, have something. But you know, you can do a lot with a cell phone now. Start documenting, you know, things that people are saying, that, you know, that if there's a story you want to tell, start documenting and writing it, and the story can come. But also, don't be afraid to reach out to filmmakers. Look at the film festival, look and see what truly filmmakers are out there. And don't be afraid to reach out to them and say, hey, I've got a really amazing story. Could I collaborate with you? I mean, would you be interested in helping me? And it's possible.
Now, one of the things that I think the film festival does really well is encourage that collaboration that you just spoke about, Juliette. So I want to ask you all, how do people contact you? How do people get an idea of some of the work that you're doing, so they may say, okay, well, this is something I want to be a part of, or this is somebody that I'd want to work with in the future? How do people contact you for those sorts of things?
Well, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook as well. And I have had people reach out to me, and I'll always respond to people who say, hey, I have an idea of how do I do this. At least guide them in the right direction. So yeah, but also just be aware, like when I started off 10 years ago, YouTube didn't exist. You know, so I'll also say, just there's so much information you can also find about how to tell stories on YouTube, and do basic filmmaking with your phone. A lot of that is now on YouTube as well. But yeah, however I can help, I would be happy to.
All right, and Rhonda, how do people contact you?
Yeah, so I'm also on Facebook and Instagram under my production company's name. So it's at birdseye.tt, and my website is birdseyeviewtt.com. And yeah, you can just drop me a message, send me an email, and we can go from there.
All right, so ladies, I want to thank you very much for the work that you continue to do, and looking forward to hearing good things about the work at the film festival. I actually see that Juliette has been nominated. The film has been nominated in the category Best TT Film and Best Medium Length Documentary. So we want to thank you for doing the work and putting in that work. And we also want to thank you on behalf of the entire news team for joining us. I'm DK Roster. Good night.